Hi guys. Welcome back to the Non-Immigrant Student Podcast. My name is Tolu Lope and I'm your host. And with me today is Nana Akofo and Mensah. Did I say that right?
Yeah, that was excellent. A lot of people
Thank
don't get it right on the first try, so
you. Thank you. She's our guest today. This is episode 9 or 10 of the Non-Immigrant Student Podcast. And the title of our episode today is Getting Married, Raising Kids, and also Pursuing a PhD degree. So obviously you know who I'm talking about. And thank you so much, Nana, for coming to my podcast. In a little while, let you introduce yourself. I will also talk about how we met, I said in my invite letter to you that and now, like, just knowing now that, just realizing when we first met, it didn't hit me that you actually had children and you were still doing a PhD. But when I think about it again, I feel like it's something that should be shared. And thank you for indulging me. I wanted to share your story. So yes, I'm a current graduate student at Cornell University. I'm doing my master's in engineering management at the moment, while Nana is pursuing a PhD degree at the University of Utah in the US as well. And this is my second season where I usually invite guests. If you're interested or you're curious, you can check out the previous episodes I've done in the past. But this season, I decided to share the stories of other non-immigrant students, even for myself, because I want to know. I want to know what loophole, what mistakes not to make, what things to avoid, and things I should do so I can be a successful non-immigrant student here in the US. So before we start, I like Nana to introduce herself, and I also like her to share how we met. I always do that. I know our story is not exactly long, but I'd like you to share how we met, and I'll corroborate your version with mine. So thank you. So Nana, please introduce yourself.
yeah. So my name is Nana. I am a PhD candidate at the University of Utah, and this is my third year. I will be graduating at the end of the year. It's almost done. Just have to defend this dissertation that I've been working on for so long, and I'm just super excited. I have two girls. They're 6 and 5, almost 6, 3, almost 4. And my husband, and we've been married for 7 years. And yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'm originally from Ghana, and so I've been in the United States for forever. I came here and did my undergrad here and did my master's. Yes, it's been about
15?
close to 10 years, I think.
Oh, 10. Oh. Okay.
Oh, yeah, actually more than 10 years.
Yeah. So I
I
thought
came here in 2008, so 2018 is 10 years.
Where was
About
I?
13 years, I think.
Where
So,
was I? Wow, 2008. I was just 2 also. Wow, you've come a long way.
so you were in high school then?
Yes, I was, yes.
Oh,
Second,
wow. That makes me feel old a little bit.
and you don't even look it up. So I think that's the beauty of it. So how did we meet?
Yes, yeah, that question. So I started a podcast called Immigrant PhD Diaries, and I guess when my podcast was published, I guess the algorithm or whatever, they just kind of put similar podcasts together. And so next to mine, I saw that Non-Immigrant Student podcast, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And so I listened to some episodes, and I'm like, I love her. I laugh. I think what really attracted me to your podcast was that you were really authentic. Like, you were just sharing. It didn't feel like it was super edited at all. And now I've learned that you don't really edit at all. And so I was like, oh, this is cool. Similar to mine. So let me reach out to her. And so I didn't know how to reach out to you, but because I don't have social media or anything. But then I was like, maybe I can find you on LinkedIn. And I did. And so I reached out to you on LinkedIn and you responded. And we kind of connected that way. And we decided we're going to do some crossover episodes. My podcast has since been put on hold, obviously, because I'm trying to focus on finishing my dissertation and graduating. And as you can tell, it's kind of hard to do a podcast. And so
Tell me about it.
that's how we met.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nana, for sharing. That was very detailed. So and just like you said, yeah, I remember that's how we met. I remember seeing your your message on LinkedIn. I'm feeling so good. You know, normally when you see some certain messages, I'm just like, oh, I'll respond to this later. But I wanted to, I tried to respond as soon as I could because I was really excited that you had found it and you had listened. And I'm happy that we find this is almost, it's like since last year, but I'm happy that we've been able to, we're finally doing our
Finally, yes.
Finally. And I'm almost getting to the point where I'm losing I won't say I'm losing motivation, but the time it just feels worse. I'm also going to the end of the year and it just feels like I can't even find time to do the things I really want to do. But I'm happy today we're recording this on a Tuesday in the middle of the afternoon. I mean, I shouldn't be saying this on camera, but I had one class that I'm supposed to go to, but I was like, you know what? I feel like this is more important. I'm going to choose my podcast over this class.
Skip class podcast.
Yes. And I was like, since Nana has like availability today, I should make it work. So thank you so much for it.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate it. Skipping your class for me. That makes me feel special.
Thank you. So obviously you've said a little bit about it, but I want to also find out what's your story. Being here for over 10 years, that's a big deal. No matter what, that's a big deal. Because we all, even me, I tell myself, I think I just want to be here for 5 to 10 years. I'm not sure I don't know what life will hold after 5, in short, even after 5 years. So I want to know what's your story. Why are you here in the US? Where are you coming from? Where did you do high school? You said you're originally from Ghana. Were you born there? Did you grow up here?
Yeah, so I definitely grew up in Ghana. I went to high school in Ghana, and growing up, it had always been my dream to pursue like undergrad education in the US. And so, you know, that was the plan really. But what helped was that I had 2 brothers who went to the same school that I did. And so they kind of guided me. And I came here and my brother was here. So that really helped a lot. And then, you know, when I came here, I wanted to be a doctor, like, you know, every other child with immigrant parents or, you know, kind of growing up in Africa. It's just one of those things. I wanted to be a doctor. And so that's what I was pursuing. And I, you know, that was my goal until after I graduated. I actually did end up taking all of my NCATs, which is the exam for medical school, did all of the requirements. But then I don't want to say that I had to decide between that and, but I ended up getting married, meeting my husband. I mean, reconnecting with my husband because I knew him back home, reconnecting with him here and then getting married, and just my goals changed. I knew, I guess if I was honest with myself, that life was not for me to be a physician. And so I decided to put that on hold and do something else. And my next big passion was public health. Actually got introduced to it during my undergrad degree. And so that's what I did. Ended up getting a master's degree. And then I followed that with a PhD. So I met my husband, we got married, we had kids. That's what's kept me in the US because they're here too, right? And also having been able to pursue my education. So yeah.
Interesting, but you kind of gave the big picture, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit. So what did you do for your undergrad? In what program did you study?
I was biology. So I was biology and pre-med.
Pre-med. Then you met your husband after undergrad?
Yes. So right after undergrad, so I mentioned that we knew each other in Ghana. We knew each other in Ghana, we were friends. And I came here and he came here. Like
at teen years, sorry to cut you. At your teenage years?
Yes. We were like, I must have been 15 when I met him.
Okay. Wow.
And so, yeah, we were all young. But at that point, there was no like romance. I mean, on my side, like, at least on my side, I didn't like him, but he said he liked me then, but I didn't know about it. So.
Okay. And where did you do your undergrad? University of Utah?
No, so I actually was in Hawaii. I went to, it's called Brigham Young University, Hawaii.
What?
Yes.
What? Really? Where was it? Wait, it's everywhere. I just think everywhere has water in Hawaii. So there are actual roads. Okay, no, this is a very dumb question to ask, of course. But like, how was it school in Hawaii?
It was, I don't know. People they talk about Hawaii and they do, this vacation place and it's
Yeah,
exciting.
I feel like once you get to the airport, when you come down, you just go to the beach, and that's all that's there. Like the whole beach we'll see in movies.
And that's what a lot of people do when they're there. I mean, it's definitely this vacation place, definitely laid back. Um, but coming from Ghana, see, I went from Ghana to there straight, and I lived by the coast, so the beach wasn't something that was super exciting. It
Okay.
was, it was the norm. I went to the beach. It was okay. It was something that I did. And
Okay.
so, it for me back then, I guess I didn't know what I had, but now like we went on a vacation to Hawaii 2 years ago and it was amazing. Just being here and then going back. But coming from Ghana then, I guess it was okay. It wasn't like super exciting.
Yeah, I understand that. And then I'm guessing your husband came here before you did. When he came here, what university was he in?
So he went to university in Utah. So
Mhm.
that's the other satellite school. It's called Brigham Young University.
Oh, so both of you did undergrad together, basically.
No, it's a different school. That's what I'm saying. It's
But
confusing.
it's still in Hawaii.
No, it was in Utah.
Okay, okay, I didn't hear you correctly. Utah. Oh, okay, okay, okay. Okay, that makes sense
Yeah.
now.
So there are like, you can call them sister schools.
Schools, yeah.
Um,
But it's like a different campus? Same
yeah,
university, different
sort of,
campus? Oh,
sort of,
oh, I
something
see.
like
Yeah.
that.
Okay, okay. And then you decided to get a master's in public health,
Hmm.
even after writing your MCAT exams.
Yes. After writing my MCAT, it's around the time that I got married. Just kind of doing the MCATs and doing all those things. And then finally deciding that I don't want to be a physician.
Mm.
But I do know that I want to go into public health because I remember just loving it. And so,
Okay, but how were you able to, if you guys were on different campuses, how were you able to keep the relationship, maintain it, and even work towards marriage in the first place?
yes, so that's a good question. So let me clarify. I was there for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
After I moved to Utah
Mm-hmm.
for an internship, which was, at that point I was still pursuing medicine. So it was this shadowing internship that I had to work with a bunch of resident physicians in the hospital, and that was in Utah. So that's what brought me to Utah, and that's where we reconnected. So he had
Oh,
heard that I'd moved, and then he didn't even have my number. He just Facebooked me and was like, "Hey, Nana, I found out that you moved to Utah. Like, we should hang out." And so
oh, that was
that's
how.
what happened.
Oh, very
Yeah.
smart guy. Oh, I see. And then so that was when you decided to do. So you did your masters also at University of Utah. You decided to stay back, get your masters there. Wow.
Yeah.
So now, what's your PhD in?
So
Public health.
my PhD is in public health. I am my dissertation, which is the way that I specialize, is related to maternal-child health, and that's where my passion really lies.
Nice. I see. So what about maternal health appeals to you? What exactly are you trying to change or correct about the system?
Yeah. So right now, the research that I'm working on is to really understand exposures that infants, when you have moms who are pregnant who are also using drugs and substances, the babies are exposed to these substances and they have lifelong implications. And so that's kind of the research I'm working on, to understand how these exposures impact their lives, the lives of the infants.
Yeah, I'm happy you even brought that up because I'm curious myself. I mean I didn't plan to ask you this, but every time I see it at the back of a bottle, women who are pregnant advised not to drink. I just keep thinking, if someone has an addiction, how do you not help yourself not drink when you have a child? And I've always wondered too, what are the real, if like side effects? Because I haven't heard of anyone who had a child and maybe had this disease. So I'm just that's me just being curious. What are the kind of issues? What kind of issues would the child grow up with if his or her mom was drinking while she was pregnant?
Well, like in the research, there's a lot of issues that they will face. My research is particularly on the short-term outcomes. And so we're seeing that doctors are seeing things like what they call neonatal abstinence syndrome, which is the babies essentially are withdrawing from the substances when they're born. And so they're having all these symptoms. You look at somebody who's trying to stop using drugs and they're withdrawing, and that's not like they're sweaty, they're shaky, and babies are having all those symptoms, and it really affects what they do. In terms of like they can't really feed well, and they're always crying, and it's really heartbreaking. To like, I mean, I haven't, I'm not a physician, so I don't deal with these kids, but I'm in the research, and some of these, it's really heartbreaking to read about these things. And so those are some of the short term. A lot of these things are resolved, but I think going forward, there are things that we even scientists don't understand yet that have lifelong implications.
Yeah, I see. Interesting. Well, I'm happy that you get to do something that actually impacts the world. So yeah.
No, yeah.
So I want, yeah. So you've also answered why you decided to go get a master's, because you were no longer interested in MCAT. I'm also having career crisis, if you can call that, like what I studied and what I really want to do. It's a whole lot. So I know you also made a lot of visa transitions. So I wanted to find out if you'd like to speak to that, coming in on an F1. So if you went straight to your master's, I'm guessing you skipped the OPT, and I'm curious. And then you got married, and then, so how were you able to keep your status always updated as an international student?
Yeah, I feel like that's an important question. So what happened was that I came here on F1 visa, and typically when you graduate, you get to do OPT for a year, 3 years if you're STEM. But my school just didn't give me, you need your OPT I-20 to then apply for USCIS, so they give you your EAD card, right? But my school wasn't in the business of issuing those I-20s for reasons. I guess they have a lot of international students. Probably more than 50% of their student body were international students. And they have this goal of training students to go back to their homelands. And so kind of for them, given, you never heard that, right? Yeah, but that was a thing. Yeah.
But you didn't know that before applying there?
No, I didn't. And if I knew that, I wouldn't. It was a great school on many fronts, but just this. And so I couldn't work. So what happened was that I moved to Utah. I needed to stay in status. And so I ended up applying for, this is long, right? I ended up applying for community college just to stay in status. Because when you graduate, you have about 60 days and you have to leave the country. So I didn't get the OPT. I came to Utah, did a quick internship, and then applied to a community college just to keep my status. So I actually went to community college for a year.
Still studying biology?
At that point, I declared a chemistry major.
And you still had to pay, or did you get funding?
I had to pay, yes. You have to pay. And so, declared a chemistry major. And that was the quickest major to be able to graduate and then get OPT. So it's like I went to school an additional year just to get OPT.
OPT, yeah.
That makes sense. So
yeah, but I'm surprised they even let you graduate after 1 year.
Yeah, because I transferred my credits from my undergrad.
Oh, smart. Wow.
And so it was backwards, right? Like you get a bachelor's and now you go get an associate's. That's kind of backwards. But I was able to transfer credits, and then, but my whole point was be able to work. And so I worked for a year as a lab analyst, biochemist, I guess. Not biochemist, microbiology, sorry.
Okay.
So I did that, and that was the year that I got married. Actually, so at that point we were dating, and then.
Yeah. And can I ask if your spouse is a citizen as well, or you had to become F2?
Yeah. So my spouse was also going to school when we got married. He was finishing up his bachelor's, and he was on F1.
Oh, so you can do that. Nobody told
us. He
was
on F1, and I was on OPT. When my OPT was over, he was still F1, so I was able to transfer to F2.
Why wasn't he the F2?
Because
he was still a student. Okay. And when you became F2, then what happened next?
So when I became F2, at that point, that's when I decided I wanted to go back to school.
Okay, to do the
So
PhD.
yeah, I studied for the JRE and then took it and then applied for my MPH program.
Wow, wow. And then you
And then
became.
and at that point, you have to transfer again. So, right, you have to apply to change from F2 to F1. So I switched back to F1. And then,
And were all these processes smooth? Were they all smooth transitions to the USCIS?
yeah, a lot of them were smooth. There was one point what they required additional evidence. And I'm not even sure what that was, what they needed. But they really want to determine. And again, I have to say that I am not an immigration attorney. I'm not giving advice. I'm just sharing my experiences. But they want to know that you qualify basically as an F1. And so like if all the information that you sent wasn't right, they requested something additional. And so I'm not even sure what they did. But I ended up getting approved for that and then going back to an F1. So it's long because it's still going. So I was F1 and then right when I was done, applied for the OPT and then worked for a year. And then I was hoping to get the STEM extension. But apparently my public health degree, because it was general and not like an epidemiology, which is the science of public health, it wasn't considered STEM. And so I was hoping to work for 3 years. And then I apply for the extension and I get denied. They're like, no, like you can't.
So you had to have been studying epidemiology to be able to become that STEM in public health. That's the only section you can get the STEM extension for. Is that the only science part of public health?
Yeah, that is the science of public health. And even if your program, and it was for me, I didn't get it because everything I did was science. Here I'm taking like science courses and biostatistics, and they consider statistics STEM, and everything I do is epidemiology and biostatistics. So,
So they wanted you to have a concentration in epidemiology too. Wow.
Yeah, and the thing is, they go by the I think they call it CIP codes. Every major has a code, and so they have a list of codes. And if your code is not on that list, you don't get a STEM extension.
So you can't start explaining, oh, look at my course history. Oh my goodness. I should go check the code on my I-20. Wow, interesting. And then, so when you couldn't get the OPT extension, then you went for a PhD.
No, that's not when I went for the So what did I do? Did I go back? At that point, my husband was already working.
Oh.
And he had gotten his H-1B.
Oh, I see.
So I went on as his dependent as H-4.
Okay.
And I really wanted a quick, when you remain in the U.S. and you do a change of status, it takes a long time, like 6 months or more. And so I didn't want that. Yeah, I didn't want that. Yeah, that's going to be more than exactly. So I didn't want that. So I had to leave the country. I was like, I'm just going to leave the country and then apply for a visa. Does that make sense?
No. So you left. So after the point where you couldn't get the OPT extension, you worked after your master's, you went out F1, got the OPT for 1 year. You decided to go back to Ghana.
So I went to Canada.
Nana.
I know. So my story is
Oh wow. But first of all, I want to know, like, I'm asking this with all honesty, not because I have any plans to do anything illegal. But I want to know what the process is. Like, you missing the 60-day limit of staying in their country. How do they come looking for you? Or have you heard of anyone who's been deported before? Like, how do you just ensure you avoid any of those risks before I come back to why you went to Canada?
Yeah, so I didn't actually stay in the country longer than 60 days. I left before 60 days. So like they send you that rejection letter, and then in the letter they tell you have 60 days to leave the U.S. or find or transfer to another status. And so what I ended up doing was actually leaving the country before the 60 days. So I wasn't in violation of anything at all. So I left to go to Canada and then applied So I applied while here. Like I applied for an H4, which is dependent of H1B.
So in Canada, so you were able to get a visa to Canada?
Yes, I already had a visa to Canada.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, because I'd been to Canada to visit. So
Okay.
that worked out. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So when you went back, when you moved to Canada, how come did you have to go to the Ghanaian embassy in Canada to apply for H4 or the US embassy in Canada?
So the US embassy in Canada to get the
H4. Why couldn't you do it from here in the US? Why couldn't you just apply for it?
You could, but that takes 6 months and you only have 60 days.
60 days. Oh my God.
But I'm sure that I think there are also, I might be wrong. But I think there are also provisions when you want to, as long as you've applied before your 60 days, I think you should be fine, but don't quote me on that.
That exactly. I feel like go to Canada if you have a visa. Wow, but that's so risky. Wow, that's a lot. So when you were able to get the H4 and you came back, how long did that also take? 6 months in Canada?
No, that took about a week.
Wow. And you were back here like nothing happened?
Yeah, and I was back in a week. Yeah.
And then what next? Then you just moved to were you already applying for PhD before you got the H4?
No, at that point I wasn't. So I now at that point I also had 2 kids.
Okay, so this is where you started raising children.
So I was home raising my little girls, being the stay-at-home mom, just waking up in the morning and thinking, oh, what fun thing can I take my girls to do?
Yeah.
And then, it was a lot of fun. It was also hard and weird because I wasn't used to staying home, the whole concept of, staying home with your kids. But it was great because they were also little at that point, and I guess needed me much more than they do need now.
Okay, so instead of skipping to the PhD, so I thought it was getting married, then you started PhD, and then you had them. So that brings me, because you said you had almost finished, so I was doing the math, or maybe you started PhD before you had them. So let me ask about the children, because I also have some questions here about, race. And I hear that in the US, how in Africa we start school 1, 2 right off the bat, we're already in school. I hear here you have to take them to kindergarten, daycare before they start preschool. So did you have to homeschool them? What was that process like, raising children? How I'm thinking, if I have to raise children outside my home country, what would I do as a mom? Outside the values are not. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think the most challenging part of raising kids outside of your home country is just the lack of support that you have. Because I just look at my cousins and even my sister who's back home, and they have my parents. And so, and a lot of other family members. And so they have that support. And for me, it was just us. I had my first, during my master's program, the first year of my master's program, that's when I had my first, and it was just me and my husband and trying to figure out.
Did you have to go to Canada with her? Sorry. Did you have to travel to Canada with her?
No, at that point my mom was visiting, so I just left them with her.
Okay, that's okay. That makes sense. And then, so please continue.
Yeah.
About homeschooling.
And how? So when they're little, I guess school starts at 5 or 6. Kindergarten is when it starts, and before that, you have an option to do preschool or to just kind of teach them at home if you wanted to. So we decided to do preschool, and so 2.5. At 2.5, my oldest was in preschool.
It's been tough. Just like to teach them for 5 years. I don't know how parents do that before you put them in school. So aside lack of support, what else would you say has been a challenge, like with raising children, even while doing your PhD right now? What would you say has been the hardest thing for you to adjust to? Because I know even as an African mom and wife, I'm sure you still have to tend to your husband. Probably your husband is also a modern day man, but even with all of that, having able to manage your priorities and your responsibilities.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about my master's program and, and having that one child, and, it was just one, but for me, it was just hard. And And now that I have two and still doing my PhD, I'm thinking, man, that was easy back then. But I thought it was hard. And it was hard because when she was little and didn't get enough sleep, or, you wake up at night to feed her and all of that stuff. And on top, I have to go to school the next morning and come back and still do my homework. So kind of trying to navigate that, your child needs versus your own need. Like the responsibilities that you have, aside raising her, all of those other things, just trying to like balance and navigate that was the hardest. And
Were
now
you allowed to bring her to class?
I did a couple times. Yeah. Because sometimes, you have babysitters cancel on you, or sometimes they're sick. And I'm like, I know they're sick, but I don't want to miss class. So I did. And I just had the best, BYU. That's where I did my master's, and they're amazing professors, and everybody was really understanding.
What's BYU?
So Brigham Young University is the where I did my MPH.
Okay. Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
you came to Utah to do it at the other campus.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah.
Wow.
And yeah, they're just super understanding. And I remember so many times I just couldn't even finish an assignment on time, and I would say, "Hey, I can't. Is it okay if I turn it in later?" And they were all like, "Of course, like we get it, And so that's how I got through. Just letting everybody know that I am a new mom and I am struggling and I'm trying to get this education too.
Yeah.
And so, at that point I needed all the help I could. And so I didn't try to do anything by myself, I guess.
I'm happy to hear that. And did you still have a student job while at it? Even
I
while
did. I had like a research job, but it wasn't as demanding. I just had I was either TAing. There was one semester I was TAing, and one semester I was just doing research. And that wasn't too demanding. And I didn't actually have a lot of hours, which also, I didn't need to, because the school that I went to just had a lot of funding. And so my tuition was paid, and, including books, and, it was fully funded.
Okay.
And so I didn't really have the need to work extra hours or anything.
And then, this might be a really personal question, but it's fine if you don't go all in. I wanted to know, I wanted to ask how you decided on having your children, because I'm thinking maybe I would have waited till I was done, to do it, then have kids, or was it a personal decision, or it just happened? What would you say it's advisable for if I decided to have an extra degree, should I think of having children before going for it or after? What would you advise?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think that will be always depend on that person, who you are and what your goals are and what you value. And for me personally, I feel like that choice was taken out of my hands, because at the point when I got accepted, I was already pregnant.
Accepted to PhD or to master's?
To the master's.
Oh. Okay, maybe out of your hand. Yeah, because I'm thinking you applied for it anyway, right? You had applied for the master's.
Yeah.
Was there family planning in place, or would you advise to use birth control? Okay, this is going in another direction, but because I'm wondering, if I go married, how do I make an agreement with my husband that, I'm not ready to start kids, I just applied to university, my admission, my acceptance might come in anytime. How do so I'm just thinking around that, and what you have to say about that.
Yeah, the reason I say it was taken out of my hands was because, we got married. I didn't have any plans. I knew I wasn't going to go to medical school. But at that point, I hadn't decided to pursue public health and get a master's.
Okay.
And so what we had decided was we're just going to get married and wait a year and start having kids, because that's what we wanted. We just wanted kids, like right away. And so we waited for that year. And then decided, hey, we're just going to start having kids. And so I guess at that point, I was applying. I didn't really think much of it. I guess it wasn't, it wasn't something that I was actually thinking about, but then at that point, it both happened. I was pregnant and I gotten accepted into a program. And so I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. I mean, I did think about maybe I could take a break, but then I decided against it, because I was like, if I take a break, I won't go back. I know I won't go back. I didn't.
Oh, decide to push yourself. Oh, now it makes sense. And then this is when you moved your H4 visas to an F1 visa now as a PhD student. So now after this PhD, do you think you'll be able to get a H1B or you'd have to move back to H4?
So yeah, I will just be doing an OPT, and yeah, and with a PhD, I do have a lot more option. When I apply, even for the H1B, there's not a cap for PhDs, and so there's a lot more chances to
Just
get.
to clarify, cap means like you don't have to renew every 3 years, right?
No, so the cap means that they do have a limit of a number of applications. You know, when they do the H1Bs, again, don't quote me on this, there's a number. And when they reach that number,
it's 5,000. I think I recently went for a conference with the international office in my school, and I think they said there's 5,000 slots every year.
Yeah, and once they reach that number, then it's a lottery. So it's not like you can get it or not. You know, my husband's first try, he didn't get the H1B, and then the second.
So for a PhD student, even if they reach the cap of 5,000, they will still give you an H1B visa. I'm happy for you then. Then I'd say there's pressure, but no pressure, maybe.
But there's also like other options, which I'm looking into. And one of them is the National Interest Waiver, which is you can apply for a green card by yourself as long as you prove that you are of interest in the United States. So that's something that you can research on if you're interested. And that's what I've been researching. So there's quite, and at this point, also in my husband's career, like we are already in the green card process. So, yeah.
So I'm really coming for vacation in Utah soon there. Very soon. Also, but how do you prove, okay, I'll probably research on you, but for a PhD student, for other PhD students who might be listening, how do you prove relevance to the US as a PhD student?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like for a lot of PhDs, they're showing their research that you're like seasoned researcher and you're really contributing to the research. And that is a lot of them, it's like, how many publications do you have? And not only that, how many people have cited your research and published those findings? And so those are, and again,
they'll be looking at, have cited your interest. Who do you advise to get on your side to look like you're really an interest?
So the way that it works is when you publish a paper in an academic journal, other researchers, like when you do your research, you get to cite other researchers. And when you publish that research, then that becomes a record, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So you can go on Google Scholar and look at any author, like it can be a friend or like any famous researcher, and you look at their profile and then you can see all of the things that they've published. In addition, you can see other publications that have cited that research. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So I see.
So,
to be published. Wow, that's Nana. I don't, if I was put through this much stress, I would just be like, I'm going back to my country. But I'm inspired. So what other? So you have the National Interest Waiver, H1B. Is there any other one you want to recommend? Any other route for a PhD student to get work visa?
And you can also always start with your OPT and your STEM extension, and
well, so you don't have to do the OPT before applying for the national interest. You can just apply right now.
Yeah, you don't.
Well, thanks for the heads up. I'll also look into it. I'll find my relevance very soon to this country. Okay, thank you. And then why did you even decide to start a podcast? I know you started like the Immigrant Diaries about PhDs, and I also went through it and I was like, oh, this will really, like, I see how the other PhDs here, I don't know if it's struggle or struggle in silence. It feels like they almost don't have a life. It just feels like they're doing so much to get to it. And I'm always like, why? I'm just always asking, why put yourself through this? So why did you really decide to do a PhD? And why did you decide to start a podcast about it?
So the reason I decided to do a PhD was I knew that I wanted to contribute to the knowledge that was there. I mean, that's what you do as a PhD or as a researcher. especially when you're in research, not industry, is adding to the body of knowledge that exists. And so I was like, I want to be an expert in something. And at that point, I really didn't know yet, but I just knew I wanted to contribute to the knowledge. And so that's why I wanted to do a PhD. But when I got into the program, there's a lot of things that I didn't know. And I guess I was lucky enough to find some mentors. But a lot of those were different. Like, they don't look like me. They don't think like me. And it just helped when you have that, you find that one. I remember finding a Ghanaian PhD professor who has since become my mentor, and just kind of talking to her, that made a lot of difference. And so I guess I wanted to provide that for other PhDs and immigrants as well, to have our own space, and to just, it's also like this whole mentoring thing. And that's something that's also important to me. I like to mentor people. And so that's a way to just kind of get people to share the things that they've learned through their programs. And it's something I'm still passionate about, even though I haven't made a lot of progress with it. But it's definitely something that I want to keep doing. Yeah.
I'm happy to hear that. Community is important. Even for me coming here, although I would say Nigerians are not scarce or anything, but because I always had a lot of questions. I always had questions about what to do, how to do it. And like you said, you want to find people who are like you, who are blazing these trails, fulfilling the American dream. And so that's why I keep wanting to talk to people. And sometimes when I hear how valuable these stories are, I think that's one of the reasons I also decided, I should share them. I want other people to hear this, aside from just me. So thanks again for being here. And I'm looking forward to seeing you interviewing more PhDs, even for maybe if I hear some very solid stories, I'll think of doing a PhD. I've almost sworn by my ancestors' grace that I can never do a PhD because it's just 5 years. And then I know, like you said, you want to be an expert in something to me, and that's a very valid reason. In short, I don't think I've heard someone say that, and that's very, most people just say, because I always wonder what's the reward, what's the fulfilling reward about it. But now that you mentioned being an expert in something, I think that also, to me, that sounds fulfilling as well. But I just always wonder to what end, because even after I do this research, and I think I've been disappointed by research before, every time when I was in undergrad, when it fails or when no one adopts it, I'm like, so what's the point? But I guess you really have to find what you're really passionate about to undertake the journey.
I think that's what makes the difference. As for me, and like I said, I had my background is in biology. And so I was there doing like wet labs and that kind of research, in the lab. And I didn't like that. And so for the longest time, I said that too, like I could never do a PhD because it's full of research. And I didn't like that. But the kind of research that I do is epidemiology. And, I don't have to be in the lab, but I get to analyze electronic medical records and, find associations and, contribute to the knowledge that way. And that is what I'm passionate about. And yeah, like you said, like a PhD is not for everyone, and it doesn't always take 5 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What? Okay. Well, you did your master's before, so your PhD is probably what, 3 years, 3, 4?
3 years. I'm going to be done in 3 years. Yeah.
No, it's still 5 years because you did your master's. But
Yes. Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah. So yeah, people do. Yeah, but yeah, it just depends.
5 if you come out right from undergrad, 3 if you've had a master. So maybe we should make that clarification. And that brings me to my next question. So what would you say was the biggest struggle of your PhD, and how did you overcome it?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the biggest struggle of my PhD is just kind of navigating all of those things that it's not really written, or like it's unsaid rules. You always, as a PhD, you always have a relationship with a mentor, and that relationship has to go well for you. And so just kind of navigating that, working with faculty members, that's really important in a PhD. You do that a lot. And, sometimes you learn by making mistakes, how to work well with other people. But yeah, I will leave it at that. But yeah, it's been a struggle, but I've also learned greatly and developed like good, wonderful relationship with my mentors. But it's been a good learning experience, I guess.
Okay. And then what's your biggest struggle of motherhood and how have you overcome it?
Oh, biggest struggle of motherhood. Man. I would say that, people say they feel guilty just leaving their kids at home. I don't ever. Like, it's so nice.
Okay.
It's so nice to leave them at home and just kind of have like me time. But my biggest struggle is just I don't feel confident as a parent in the sense that, like, I wonder the things that I do and trying to guide my daughters. I want them to grow up and be confident. But I don't know. I guess I really don't know. And I guess because I'm a PhD student or, candidate or whatever, I like to think in terms of research, like what's the research that's there? And so am I following, the latest things that, makes kids successful? Like, how do I teach them to persevere? And when I tell my child, hey, that's not okay, or go to timeout, is that the right approach? Am I messing them up? You know what I mean? I struggle with that.
But when you mean confident, just to clarify, do you mean, you said you're not being confident as a parent? Do you mean your self-confidence, or you're not confident of your parenting techniques, or you're scared, you don't look self-confident to them? Which one?
No, it's more about my techniques and the things that I do. Is it gonna make them better? Or maybe it doesn't even matter, like I'm sure my parents messed up, but here I am. I think I'm okay. I turned out okay.
I say that a lot too, just to digress a bit, but I say that a lot too, that how in Africa we say, oh, we're so traumatized, our parents did this and that. So funny enough, we never, although yes, modern language buzzword will tell you, oh, it's unrecognized trauma. But I also think I'm here, I've never thought, oh, I want to commit suicide because of how much I was beaten, or because how they speak to us, like no pleasant words all the time.
Exactly,
So I never thought I had mental health issues. So I struggle between, is it just a buzzword or is it actually real? Then some people will be like, oh, you will find out if it's a trauma when you meet someone. So it's a lot too. So I understand what you mean by your parents did that. Although I'm also cautious not to say, oh, my parents did that to me, I'll be fine. So I'm also, even for myself, planning to be a mom someday, I'm also trying to find, like you said, what would be the balance. Yeah, although they always say they'll be fine in the end, but I hope our children will really be fine.
Yeah, and I think for me, I'm just learning that, I'm going to mess up as a parent. And I struggle with that, but I'm trying to understand that will be okay. Like it'll be okay because whatever I do, I think I know enough to not really mess them up real bad. Yeah. And so they'll be okay. They'll be okay. They might hate me for some things, but they'll be fine.
Yeah. And as long as you apologize, we apologize. Because most times when we're offended, it was okay. Sometimes we understood what our parents did, but we just wish they acknowledged it. They admitted it themselves and apologized, and it would have been better. But, oh well. And what would you say? I'm going to ask, it's quite personal, but I want to know as well. And if you're willing to share that, if you're not willing to share, that's fine. As a mom, how would you say you've been able to bring your husband into, raising the children as well? I know it's common for us in Africa to want to do everything ourselves. Even you saying you leave your children at home, saying that to someone who's really traditional sounds like you're disregarding. Your children should be a priority. But there's mixed feelings about that. But so how do you bring your husband in to raise children? When you leave them at home, who do you leave them with? How are you able to... How do I say this? How are you able to still stand your ground that, oh, you should do stuff in the house? I'm also doing a PhD, don't leave everything to me. How are you able to balance both?
Yeah. So it's interesting because I've never been a traditional woman in the sense. I have never, just growing up, I don't know why. And I guess maybe because I saw my parents, my dad cooked, my dad taught me how to cook, and I guess in a lot of families, that was not the thing. It wasn't my mom who taught me how to cook. It was my dad. And I saw these roles in my home, and they didn't have those traditional gender roles. My mom worked a lot, and, she didn't stay at home. And so I just never had that expectation for a husband to expect me to do all the work. And
Right.
so
Okay.
right from the start, it had always been a partnership, like a true partnership. And so we share everything equally. Even when he worked and I wasn't working, like when he got home, it was 50-50. Like, like we
Yeah.
always,
That's
um,
very important. That he didn't say, "Oh, what are you? Like, oh, you've been home all day. Why do you should you expect me to join you?" So yeah,
no,
that's
no. And so
yeah,
like, sometimes, and because when I'm home all day, you actually get tired. And so when he comes,
exactly,
yeah, you take the child and I'm going to go take a nap or something.
exactly. Oh no, being a mom is a full time job, and it's not just hearsay. It's not just talk. It's not cheap talk. It's true. It's actually true. Hmm. So I applaud you once again. And what would you say has been the biggest blessing of doing a PhD? Your greatest fulfillment. I know you're rounding up soon. So what's one thing you're happy you don't regret about doing a PhD?
Um, I, yeah, I don't regret it at all. It's very well in my goals, and I want to be a researcher, contribute to the knowledge. And so yeah, I'm grateful. I think the biggest blessing I feel like I have been able to do it, and not by myself, but I definitely had the support of my husband, because like without him, I don't know how I'd have done it. Like he's been there and he's been super supportive in everything. And so I've had that, and I've also been able to complete that in 3 years, and with kids. And so like, I guess I'm proud of that. And,
Yes.
I'm also very aware that I didn't really get here by myself. It was just through
Yeah,
all of that I got.
it's, yeah, I'm proud of you too, honestly. Doing it in that, let's say short, or just completing it within the time frame, and then still having your kids grow up really well. I'm happy for you, Nana. And then
Thank
what's been
you.
your biggest blessing about being married and having children? What's your best thing about it so far? In the 7 years you've been married, right? And raising
Yeah.
kids. Yeah. What's the biggest blessing? Would you advise me to go to get married like right off the bat, right now? Or what's your
Hey, like for me, I always like looked forward to being a wife and a mother. And
um,
so I've really appreciated the partnership that my husband and I have. And also the fact that, when you're dating and you just sometimes, I don't know, like dating is weird. Like in my
I agree.
experience, dating is just off, and sometimes it's awful. And people might say that for marriage, but at least in my experience, just marriage has been this just wonderful. I mean, not without problems, of course,
Mm-hmm.
but just always having that someone with you, like
Mm-hmm.
that, somebody that
Companionship.
you actually like, that you know, even if they mess up, you just want to forgive them, and then just, you know what I mean? Um, just
Yes, I think I do. But yeah.
yeah,
And
I get that.
and what's the greatest blessing of being a mom for you?
Um, just the little things about being a mom. Like I'm sharing my kid one day and they just blurt out the funniest thing ever. And then I just can't stop laughing, just the simple things. Or like, somebody hugging you, and just my daughter will just randomly just hug you and say, I love you, mommy. And, like those are like the cutest moments. And, it's so sweet. Yeah. I'm grateful for that. Those
Yeah,
blessings.
yeah, yeah. I'm happy to hear that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And do you have any advice for? So we're getting to the end of the episode now. Do you have any advice for women out there who, like you, probably get into marriage and then realize, oh, they still want to pursue their dreams, oh, they still want to get a second degree? What would you still tell them to go on with it? What's one advice you just have for them? And for women who are also scared of marriage, how do you help them do it? Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if I can advise people who are scared of marriage, but I want to advise people who, and again, like everybody's experience is going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're looking to pursue more education, and I don't think like marriage or kids should hold you back at all. Just know that it's going to take a lot of work. You're going to require support, and sometimes it's not there. Really, it's hard when you don't have that support. And for a situation like that, I don't even know what advice to give. But I do know my mom told me this, that like don't wait to do your education or wait to have kids. My mom's like, you can do it all. And I know that's easy to say. But it's possible. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's possible.
And you're doing it.
Yeah. And I'm lucky. I guess I have to say that I'm lucky because I do have the support that I need to do it. And that's really important.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. Thank you, Nana.
Yeah.
And just before we come to the final end, I keep saying that, but I'm sure those are not actual two words that stay together. We'll do a little this or that game.
Okay.
Although I don't know the cartoons people watch these days, but I guess I would just tell me what are the cartoons children watch these days before I ask you a question.
I don't even know. There's just too many. I mean, back in the day, it was just like, like Cartoon Network or whatever, just Scooby-Doo.
I know, right? Okay, I think I know. Do you watch Disney Plus with your children?
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes. Okay. So let me start with that. What are your girls' two favorite shows, or TV shows, or movies?
Okay. They have a lot. They like Vivo. That's on Netflix.
Netflix, yeah.
And what else do they like? Garfield, which is, I think that's on Netflix too. That's a show. Yeah, it was a movie, and then they made it into a show. My daughter's always watching it.
Interesting. Garfield and Vivo. Yeah, no, Vivo was good. I watched it with my little cousins too, who are about 8, 9, and 12. Okay, so to the this and that questions, Ghanaian jollof and Nigerian jollof.
Of course, Ghanaian jollof. Have you ever had Nigerian jollof? Oh wait, have you had Ghanaian jollof?
I mean, I have, but so we did a jollof wars recently in Cornell. I think sometime in April or May, and Nigeria won. So that's, I don't know if it depends on the chef or the actual recipe, right? So, but I'm still asking because I know some Nigerians who will still choose Ghanaian jollof. So I was thinking maybe you'd be the first Ghanaian that might choose Nigerian jollof.
I'm sorry. I would never choose Nigerian jollof.
Please, when I finally come to pay you a visit, because that's the meal I want to eat. Thank you. Maybe you might change my mind. I doubt you will, but I need you to give me some reason to argue for you when I'm not at the table. Facebook or Instagram?
Oh, that's a hard question because like I don't do social media at all. But when I did, I never did Instagram, and it was Facebook. But I think Instagram is better.
Oh, really?
In many ways, but it doesn't matter. I don't do social media.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You mentioned Netflix or Amazon Prime.
Definitely Netflix.
People say that. Well, okay.
Amazon Prime just doesn't have anything good at all. Like they have this one show that's like great, but that's
it's always one great show, and next time, coffee or tea.
Neither.
Really?
I've never had coffee. I've never had.
No, that's the lie. I saw. Look at me saying this a lie. I'm sorry. No, are you actually serious?
Yeah, I'm serious. Mm-hmm.
I saw it recently somewhere by a woman who had her first cup of coffee when she was 40, and I was like, no, this can't be true. But now that you're saying that, I might believe it. Why? How come none of your parents drank coffee? How have you been able to finish your degrees without coffee? America.
I mean, there's other ways to get caffeine, I guess. It's just not coffee.
I hear green tea has caffeine actually, but
what?
I hear green tea has caffeine, but is that enough?
Okay? Yeah, I never. And so the reason is just because of my religion. Like we don't drink coffee or tea, and so I feel like that's the only reason. Yeah, it's just very like religious. How people don't eat pork or all those things.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And so
I've met
Nothing
people
against coffee. I have nothing against coffee.
Okay, that makes sense now. Can I ask what religion or you rather share?
Yeah, so I am LDS, which is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Oh, and okay. Wait. Let me try and guess the reason behind it. You know how alcohol is a substance that helps you let down your guards and drugs. So is it behind the ideology that it doesn't let you function as your real self? Like caffeine gives you more energy, helps you stay awake. Is it under that ideology of any kind?
That's a hard question for me to answer,
Oh.
because that's what they say, and that's what I grew up with. That's the reason behind it. But just kind of growing up, I feel like it's much more than that. And I guess there are substances that, from what we do as a church, like we don't also drink alcohol or smoke or a lot of these things. And there are definitely health reasons behind that, but I think there's also like a more kind of spiritual side to it that I, to be honest, don't fully understand yet. But I'm a researcher, right? And there are definitely like things about coffee that some people get addicted to it and stuff like that. But overall, like coffee is not something that the research is saying stay away from, right? Like overall, and so. For me, I follow it because it's
You don't
my
need
religion, and you made choices, and I've made that choice to follow it, and so I follow it. But also from a science perspective, I don't know. Yeah, so that's kind of hard for me to answer. I don't know.
Yeah, no, but it's interesting. I'm happy to see that that's even possible. That people can actually not have it, because even I won't say in my culture, but in Nigeria, it's common to have bread with tea, and we call tea. I don't know if you know Milo. If you had Milo,
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what we call tea, like hot cocoa here, or like Swiss Miss. We
Yeah,
always
I
have
heard that. Obviously, sorry.
Oh, okay. So the tea you're referring to is like black tea, chai
Yeah,
tea, green tea.
yeah,
Okay,
yes,
okay,
yes,
okay,
yes.
okay, okay, okay,
Yeah. Oh
okay.
my gosh. Yeah, I love. That's like my favorite thing. Like,
Yeah,
oh my
me too. I love cold Milo. I think it's my favorite. After ice cream, I think I love cold Milo than every other
I love
drink.
Milo. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
I think I drink it every day, and my mom always brings me a packet like every single day.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. And lab work or writing?
Sorry, say that again.
Lab, like researching in the lab or writing papers. Which one?
Oh, definitely writing. Definitely writing.
Really? Wait, I
Yeah.
think I've asked two of my guests before who are doing PhD. I think they said lab, so that's interesting. That you prefer writing.
Yeah, I
And
prefer
tell
writing.
us.
Like that's where my strength lies, really.
Oh, I see. Oh, interesting. And for the last question, or semi last, tell us something that's about you that's not your LinkedIn.
That's not what
On your LinkedIn.
on my. I didn't hear that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Tell us something about you that we can't find on your LinkedIn.
Oh, okay. Something. Something about. So you mean like something professional?
Or personal? Personal might be more. Anything at all that we don't know or we can't find anywhere.
Oh, hold on. I didn't think of all that one. Hmm.
Take your time.
Yeah, I have to think about that one. What's something that people that I have a passion that I guess a lot of people don't know about, but like I am a big fan of spoken word poetry. And so
Oh,
that is something that I guess you wouldn't find anywhere. I write poems. I'd like
oh,
to perform spoken word, but I haven't had the confidence ever to.
oh.
But I love, like,
Now that I know that about you, I would always recommend you to anyone who asks me about it. Because I have another friend who likes to do it. She even has a whole podcast called The Poem Clock. And I
oh,
feel like that's so
wow.
ingenious. Yeah, I know. So
Oh,
yeah.
that's
You
amazing.
should I should recommend you as a guest to that podcast. Yeah. She's studied English language, so shout out to you, Alex. And yeah, so yeah, it's nice to know that about you. Nice fun fact. Okay, I
Yeah.
think we have come to the end of this episode. Thank you so much, Nana, for today. Thank you. I even enjoyed like learning more about you and learning. I've learned about the national interest waiver. I've heard about. I'm now aware that there are men like your husband who value partnership over gender roles in marriage. And then thank you so much for sharing and for making me know that as a woman, you can have it all. You can eat your cake and have it.
Yes, always. Can I say one thing? I guess I would have said one thing that you wouldn't find is that I'm a feminist.
Oh, okay.
Like my husband calls me like a card-carrying feminist. And so like I'm all about like equality and stuff like that. And I guess one of my favorite, do you know Chimamanda?
Tell me about it. Of course I know her.
My gosh. She's like my idol. Like I love her.
Yeah. I don't, and funny enough, when I started listening to Chimamanda, it wasn't about, I didn't know her for feminism. Although let me rephrase. I knew her to stand up for feminism, but I think it was in the way she wrote and the way she spoke. Sometimes when I listen to her, I'm listening to how her words are well stringed together. I'm listening to how she's saying things that matter. I'm listening to how she still talks like a Nigerian, and it just makes me want to aspire towards that, even for someone who likes to talk, who likes to speak. So yes, Chimamanda is definitely a fave. I enjoy listening to her, honestly. And I like how she's a thought leader and she's changing the world, and they're inviting her all over. To digress, have you listened to her recent speech at Humboldt Forum?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, yeah, you don't have social media. I should find a way to send it to you. She really, it's a lot, but this wasn't even about feminism, but it was about returning artifacts from Africa back to Africa at a forum where you were supposed to give the keynote speech, opening a museum in Germany. So I was just like, where did she get the audacity? I could, and she said it, and you know how they say it in Africa, that when someone is insulting someone, they're using English. It's like she's saying it yet so politely. It's like the kind of insult that you would take, because it's like they're bashing you, but you can't do anything about it. Well, yeah.
No, she is like bold and.
She means what she says, and she says what she means, and I love
Yes.
This is us being so happy about you. And in the spirit of women and feminism, what's one last thing you'd like to say to female grad students as well, or even any grad student, an international non-immigrant student who is probably riding the whole waves of visa to visa, or who probably had the same story? What's one last word you'd like to say to them?
That it's not as bad as you think. It always gets better. I guess that's what I would say. Yeah.
And for me, I think another thing I learned from your story is don't stop pushing. Like you never gave up and like, I can't find anything else to do. I'm going back. Although I would say you were already married, but I see that there was no gap. There was no time in which you said, I have to pause, But life kept moving for you. And so that's something I'm going to learn from. So thank you so much for taking me. I really appreciate you being on this episode, and thank you. I feel like even I'm learning so much, and I hope that if we continue to build our relationship, I'll continue to learn more about you and be more inspired. So thank you for being on my podcast today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I just had a great conversation. Yeah,
it was indeed a conversation. So thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'll stop. And to everyone who's listening, where can they find you if they need to contact you?
Yes, I can give you my email address, or I don't know.
I know if they reach out to you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, you can definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn. My name is Nana A. Mensah, I think is what's there listed.
Yeah, and if anyone might find Liz reaching out to you, you can let me know. I will reach out to her, take permission to get her email to you, and that will work. Thank you so much for tuning into our episode today. And if you're watching our video, thank you for watching our video. Hopefully this should go up on YouTube. And yeah, thank you to all of you who support us, who support our podcast. Nana's podcast
it's called the Immigrant PhD Diaries. And there's going to be more episodes in the coming months. So
yes. Hopefully, Nana, don't disappoint us. We're waiting on you. Okay. And for as many of you who have been here, my old timers, my new timers, thank you for always tuning in. You know where to find me at the Non-Immigrant Student on Instagram, Tolu Olukomi on LinkedIn, and Tolu Olukomi on Twitter. Thank you all so much for tuning in today, and have a great rest of your day. Good night. Bye. Good morning, whatever. Bye, guys.